Welcome into Flag for Discussion, episode 43 for Thursday, November 13th. My name is Farbod Merkazi, here as always with Jace Hatfield. And Jace was telling me right before we started recording that we really miss Brian Kelly because LSU games just aren't fun to talk about anymore, right?
The post-game media isn't nearly as entertaining now. It's lame. I want to hear reporters get yelled at.
Well, I at least want to yell at Brian Kelly after he does it to them. But we got a hell of a preview show for you today. We have to react to the college football playoff rankings second edition coming out on Tuesday. The F4D committee's been brewing up their own poll. The F4D Poll 3.0 is coming out. Is it 3.0? Yes, 3.0 is coming out in just about 20, 30 minutes. And make sure you stay tuned for that. Tell us what you disagree with. But as always, there's one main rule with the F4D poll. It isn't on Jace and I. It's on the committee. Just keep that in mind. But we got to talk about Texas, Georgia. Alabama's playing Oklahoma, TCU, BYU. There's a lot of great games this week. I mean, Jace and I have become like fans of just a group of 5 teams in general. I think if we could get nightmare scenario, Jace, in the ACC, Duke wins out, they win the conference, they're 9-4. What's the harm in letting Tulane and USF or USF and like James Madison that would at that point be like 11-1 or 12-1, or who's leading the Mountain West? Like, what's the harm in just all of a sudden being like, let's just add some fun and spice to the playoff, as if it doesn't have enough already?
Yeah, I mean, Duke get blown out by Illinois. Not that Illinois is a bad team, but they're like nowhere near the top of the Big Ten. If we have 12-1 James Madison and 12-1 like North Texas, whoever wins the American, I wouldn't hate a world where we take 2 group of 5 teams and say screw you to at least the ACC in some fashion. Granted, it's also tough because the ACC, oddly enough, has good teams. Like I still think Miami's arguably a top 15, maybe even top 12 team in the country. We'll see what the true sayers, the F4D committee, have to say, but maybe they think so too.
Would you have actually? I'm gonna change up our show real quick because I have to ask you this: if Duke is 9-4 and you are the playoff committee, they're 9-4 ACC champions, and you have 11-1 Tulane or 11-2. The winner of the American is going to be 11-1, or the South Florida. What do you do? Do you put Duke in the playoff? Like, do you start this week if they win their game this week against Virginia? Do you put them at 25 just in case it's a 4-loss team at 25, question. Just so you can, because you can't on the last ranking be like, all right, they're going from unranked to 12th.
Okay, yeah, okay. So to win out, they would beat Virginia, which would be a ranked win. But I think if they also beat Virginia, Virginia wouldn't be ranked anymore. But ranked win is a good win. North Carolina, Wake Forest aren't going to move many needles. Dang, where is that? Okay, so if they would have to beat like one of like Georgia Tech or Pitt. Oh, I hate that question because I have no idea what the answer is. Like
I don't want to see that. That sounds terrible.
Give me the JMU and the American. Give me the 12-1 teams. Let's see what happens. But I think realistically, you probably got to put Duke in at that point if they're beating all these teams to get there.
All right, we've talked enough. Make sure you are following us on Twitter at F4 Discussion. We're on TikTok at Flag4 Discussion. Started posting again this week. Claps for me and Jace. We're on YouTube at Flag for Discussion. Wherever you get your podcast, at Flag for Discussion. Make sure you're following us. Make sure you subscribe. Ringing that bell. We appreciate everyone who's done it so far, and we can't wait to see how far we keep taking this thing. Podcast talk. Let's get into our picks. Jason, I'm going to hand the ball off to you as I always do. Where are we in our picks? Give the listeners a brief.
Yeah, we both went 3-2 last week. So I'm sitting at 41, 38-1. You're at 43, 36-1. Slowly closing the gap. We're doing another 5 picks this week. We'll get into that later. But a chance to tie or take the lead for myself. Shot in the bark. You're sitting there at 10 points. You had, I like your comment here. Your last hit was Kentucky with the full 3 points. That was the game that also effectively eliminated Hugh Freeze from having a job and put him on LinkedIn. And you called that. You even said like part of your reason for picking that was you think that's the Hugh Freeze bye-bye game. And I'm at 12 points. I got a big hit from Cal recently beating Louisville. I said I expect some ACC anarchy that happened last weekend. So shout out Cal for clutching up for us. And then parlays, we are 1 for 11 on the year. We have been on a massive cold streak. We're still up financially, but 1 for 11. I feel like, we can do better. And we say it every week, but we like our parlay this week, so we'll see how it goes.
Parlay will be picked in about 40-ish minutes. Make sure you stay tuned for that, or at least if you want, fast forward to that. But we got a lot of good content coming up, so stay tuned, have some fun, sit back, grab some popcorn. All right, we got to get down to Athens. Number 10, Texas is playing Georgia. Number 5, Georgia. Georgia's a 6-point favorite. This is the Saturday night game, 7:30 Eastern on ABC. This is what college football intended their night games to be. You have a wonderful slate during the day, and the headliner is Saturday night at 7:30, where you have two top-tier SEC teams playing each other for probably the right to be in the playoff. And I would say if Texas loses, they're risking complete ouster from the playoff. This is a must-win, make-or-break game for them. Georgia, I think if they were to lose, they would be only thrown on the bubble. I don't think they're out of the playoff if they lose. Do you have a lean on this game? Obviously, we'll give our picks at the end, but there's so many different ways to look at this game.
Yeah. So I started trying to dive in to try to find some edges in the game. And while I was doing that, I found a lot more of I didn't mean to do this, but I kind of found myself realizing this is going to be a huge defensive battle. I noticed Georgia, a great third down offense. So I was like, okay, they're 19th in the country. Maybe there's an edge there. But Texas is a really good third down defense. They're 23rd. And then on the flip side, the Texas offense is not very good on third downs, but the Georgia defense is not very good on third downs. Don't really know what's going to happen with that. And then both teams are not great in the red zone offense. They get to the red zone semi-often compared to the rest of the country, still outside the top 50, and then they don't convert very high. They're 58th for Georgia, 78th for Texas in terms of their conversion rate when they get into the red zone. And then defensively, they're both in the top 25 in terms of red zone stops. So I could see a world where they kick a lot of field goals. If you're in a college fantasy league, I'd try to get one of these kickers. I just don't know if there's going to be two teams that punch the ball, and especially Texas, a team that as of late, they've been running the ball a little bit better, and I think that's something you and I have talked a lot about. But it's still not been great. Like they're still not putting up any sort of rushing stats that's going to make you think they're going to run all over Georgia. They have been throwing the football better though, but also that comes at the cost of Georgia's young secondary, which has kind of been, I think, the story for the Georgia defense all season. They're starting to come into their own against Mississippi State in last week. Shut both Mississippi State, because of an injury, had to roll out two quarterbacks, but they threw for only 160 yards. Georgia got to him for 3 sacks. So that Georgia young secondary is starting to play a little bit better. I'm kind of expecting a slugfest, which if you remember that Texas-Ohio State game at the beginning of the year, I don't think it's going to be that ugly, quote unquote, but I do think it's going to be more similar to that than a 33-27 game.
Yeah, I think this is a perfect game of what we keep saying about like the keys for college football teams in this 12-team playoff era. Of your week 1 team should lose every time they played the week 7 version, the week 10 version of your team. And that's what we've seen with Texas. I think if you remember after week 3 or 4, I had a buy or sell question for you. And it was when Texas and Penn State were both unranked. And I said, buy or sell, one of these teams will be ranked in the top 10 again at the end of the season. And I think you sold it because we just assumed Texas's offense was just going to not figure it out. Their offensive line was so putrid that it was just terrible. And no matter how much growth, like Arch wasn't even going to be able to grow because he was just running for his life out there. As we've seen over the weeks, Texas has kind of come into their own a little bit. There's Steve Sarkisian. He's a great play caller, but he just wasn't calling his plays or designing a game plan around the bad offensive line and around the ability that they can't run the ball very well compared to how they've done it in the past years. But now he kind of has figured it out. Maybe Arch is growing too. He's a young quarterback. This is probably his 9th start. So there's a lot of factors here to consider for Texas. I mean, Texas in general, I want to read off a couple things for you. Texas beats UTEP 27-10. That's when everyone was like, okay, they're clinging on right now, but if they suddenly play a team with equal talent or worse talent, they're going to lose. They're clinging on by a thread. They lose to Florida on the road, 21-29. They lose. They go to overtime on the road to Kentucky, barely win 16-13. On the road against Mississippi State, they win in overtime 45-38. And obviously, we saw 2 weeks ago against Vanderbilt, they had a huge lead and then they almost blew it at the end, beat them 34-30. So there's an aspect of growth with Texas. And then there's an aspect of they're still barely scraping by these teams that are either on equal or much worse footing than them. I mean, they have no business. If they're going to beat Georgia, they cannot come out playing the way they did against Florida, Kentucky, or Mississippi State. And I know I'm only talking about Texas right now. We'll get into Georgia, but I think that's the biggest key of this game because I think Georgia might have a lower ceiling than Texas, if like Texas at their best, but they have a much higher floor. At their worst, Georgia still can beat anybody in the country. At their worst, Texas can lose to an unranked Florida team that fired their coach. So for me, the biggest key at the beginning, like to when I'm still considering this game, is what Texas do I?
Yeah, and I think also part of it, like Texas seems like a team. Steve Sarkisian seems like a coach. Back against the wall, which is right now, I don't think they can afford. If they lose, they could still maybe backdoor it, but it's out of their hands. They would need some help. I think back against the wall is a team that's going to fight, and I think we're going to see that. Like I said, I think a low-scoring game is what's going to happen, but I do think that benefits Texas a little bit. Texas is 10th; they're +8 in the turnover margin this year. Georgia's -2, so something like that, where in a close, low-scoring game, the first team to make a mistake could really be costly. And the stats will tell you Georgia's a little bit more likely to make a mistake and not take one from you than Texas. But then again, it's in Athens. I go back and forth. This is when we have this game where I pick them, and we'll share our picks later. I went back and forth on this one a lot because if we get the Georgia, that like Nate Frazier had 12 carries for 180 yards, over 15 yards a carry last week. That is unbelievable. And if he does that on Texas, it's going to be a long game for Texas. And I don't think the Texas offense is going to be able to keep up with something like that when they only get 5 possessions. Texas, on the other hand, they've been improving each week. If we get the Arch Manning we've seen the last 2 or 3 weeks, especially like the beginning of the Vandy game where he came out slinging, if we get that Arch against a young Georgia secondary, who's to say that they don't get a big turnover late in that game and take a lead? So I don't know. Go back and forth in this one.
That's what this game feels like for me too. Is like it's just constant back and forth because, like you said, on one hand Texas is growing, but on the other hand Texas has looked bad on the road. And on one hand, Georgia hasn't necessarily put a lot of teams to bed pretty early. They have a home loss already, but on the other hand, Georgia first loss at home since before COVID was to Alabama this year. I don't if I'm not going to put any money down on Kirby Smart necessarily losing 2 games at home in a single year. I know that that's terrible analysis, but the fact that it's Kirby Smart coaching is Georgia, like that is an aspect of it too. And also now shifting to the Georgia side, Georgia hasn't looked dominant all season either. They were a drop pass in the end zone against Alabama away from taking the lead in the fourth quarter. Now they could have still lost that game. No, we don't know what Alabama would have done to respond, but they could have had that lead. They lose that game. They beat Tennessee, which was one of the most impressive wins of the year, in overtime, just a shootout game. They were down a lot early. They beat them 44-41 on the road. But like the Auburn game was weird. They should have gone down 17-0 if the officials weren't whack, and Georgia beats them 20-10. The Ole Miss game, I thought that was one of the most impressive wins. I already said about Tennessee, but that was one of the most impressive wins because Ole Miss had that game won through the third quarter and then just dropped the ball. But the 3 games that I told you about Texas winning, or they lost to Florida by 8. Georgia beat Florida by 4. Still not the performance you want. Florida had a chance to actually take the lead again, but Georgia held on. They beat Mississippi State in overtime by 7. Georgia beat them last week by 20. Texas beats, what's the other team? Kentucky by 3 in overtime. Georgia on October 4th, 35-14. With similar opponents, Georgia has taken care of business. For me, just talking about keys to the game of, like I said, which Texas shows up, because I think this could be a knockout dragout fight. And Arch, I'm ready. I know the stock is still low. I'm ready to buy as much stock as I can in Arch, and it's not for
Really?
this year.
Before the Georgia
I
game?
think that's the tough part, especially because you know what my pick is for the game, and that doesn't really correlate. But I really like what I'm seeing from Arch. A lot of it is still like he still needs to grow. The mechanics are a little off. He's still throwing off the back foot a little bit. It's just not everything's perfect. But what we saw flashes of him in the spot starts that he had last year that everyone used to say he was going to be elite, and we just hadn't seen it all this year. We're starting to see the flashes a little bit. And this is a game that he can actually announce himself of like, I may have struggled at the beginning of the year, but I'm still damn good. And I'm just growing. I'm mainly buying the stock because it's low. Maybe it'll get lower after this Saturday. But I do trust Arch to show up and put up a good performance. I think Sark has proven himself to be a pretty solid big game coach. I don't have his record ready in my head right now, but he's been in playoff games. They haven't made it to the national title game, but they've won playoff games. Obviously with Quinn Ewers, I think there's going to be a good game plan by Texas. I just wonder how quick. Like, here's actually what I'll ask you, and where I'll stop rambling. This is a Texas team that if they come in with a good game plan and they come in the way they did against Vanderbilt or even the week before, they could take a pretty quick lead on Georgia. Georgia's not the quickest starting team, but Georgia's also proven that they can come back. They almost came back against Alabama. They came back against Tennessee. If Georgia doesn't, they came back against Ole Miss. If Georgia doesn't have to come back, then it's not going to be a contest for me. But if Texas takes a 10-0 lead, then we'll have to consider. I don't know where I'm even going with this. You're right. This game's so back and forth. I'm just considering everything on both sides.
Yeah, it feels like Texas has not played 4 quarters of good football since Sam Houston State this season. They haven't. They've played like amazing 2 quarters at a time, but they haven't played 4. Against Kentucky they played a half of good quarter of football. Against Mississippi State, they played 2 quarters of late game good football. Against Vandy, they played 2 quarters of good early game football. Georgia, you can count on them to play the 3rd and 4th quarter well. They've done it in every game. It's Kirby Smart. We know what we're going to get. Yeah, I think it does come down to if Georgia digs himself in a hole, it's not over. We've seen Texas implode, and we've seen Georgia take advantage of teams doing that. I think it's either Texas gets a big lead early and then tries to find a way to hang on if they're going to win this game, or it's Texas gets off to a slow start and then it's just a slow death of Georgia. Nate Frazier running for 150, Stockton running for 50 plus, the plethora of other Georgia backs running for another 50 plus, and it's a slow burn for a Texas team that ends up falling. The wheels fall off, late in the second half, and you end up with a couple score game win for Georgia. I think if Texas wants to win or be in this game, it has to be due to a fast start in this game. Don't let that young secondary get their footing and take advantage of it before they do.
I think for my last point on this is if Texas wants to win this game, they need to shore up that run D. It's not the worst. They have a really good defense in general, but like you keep mentioning, Georgia has the potential to just not need Gunnar Stockton to do much. They have the potential to just lean on the ground game and run the ball down Texas's throat. And at that point, you're playing Georgia football. It's not Iowa football where it's going to be 17-10 or 18-16 like last week. But if Georgia starts bullying you on the offensive side and then their defense with the corners hang on to cover the receivers really well, and then all of a sudden, if Georgia has a lead, you know what they do best? They can get after you. They haven't been doing much of sacking the quarterback this year. They're actually amongst the worst teams in the country, shockingly, in getting after the quarterback. But that defense historically feeds off of leads, so they can just rear their heads back and get after the quarterback. And we know how Texas offensive line is. If Georgia takes an early lead, it's over for me. I don't know if Texas is going to have the protection, the wherewithal necessarily to come back. That's my last point.
I agree with that. I think we'll know what kind of game we're going to get by the end of the first quarter. I said with Oregon, Iowa, we know who's going to win that game by who had the first quarter lead, which was right. This game, I think we'll know what kind of game we're going to get by the end of the first quarter. If it's a Texas lead, that's all right, I'm going to lock into this game, right? But if Georgia's up 10-0 at the end of the first quarter, I'll probably start flipping channels, check out some of the other 6:30 Central games, see what's on. But I think after the first quarter, we'll know.
I also have it on. I mean, I actually it's on ABC, so YouTube TV, please, for the love of God, fix this. Like I gotta watch that game, or else I don't know what I'm gonna do. All right. So that's our Texas Georgia game preview. Obviously, we'll give you our pick at the end of the show. Let's get into the college football playoff poll that came out on Tuesday. There's not a lot to be infuriated by this week. I think you could argue there's plenty, but a lot of those frustrations were the frustrations of the original one that came out last week. There are still some confusion, some questions. I gotta hand it to you because you're our poll extraordinaire.
All right, we'll start off with the top 10 here. So starting at number 10, they have Texas. At number 9, Notre Dame. Number 8, Oregon. Number 7, Ole Miss. Number 6, Texas Tech. Number 5, Georgia. Number 4, Alabama. Number 3, Texas A&M. Number 2, Indiana. And number 1, Ohio State. Very solid top 10. I don't really have too many issues with it. I love Texas Tech at 6. We'll see what the truthsayers that have been signed for the Flag for Discussion Committee are saying about Texas Tech, but rumor has it they almost bumped them up to 5. I think that was a long conversation they had in that room. Texas Tech, I like them above Ole Miss. I like them above Oregon. I think they've looked better than both of them, and I think they have an equally impressive resume to the other one-loss teams. And like I said, I get that we're going to put Georgia there, and I'm not mad about putting them at 5, but I also wouldn't be upset if somebody told me that they think Texas Tech should have that 5 spot. If I was going to nitpick as well, I would probably put Oregon over Ole Miss. I think they have equally attractive losses and equally attractive wins now at this point. So when you look at the meat in the middle of the season, I think Ole Miss has a lot of one-score games against subpar teams where Oregon has blown out the vast majority of subpar teams. And they also, like, if you look at like ESPN's own metrics, which are, as we all know, built to be skewed for the SEC. Even if you don't think that that's true, either way, even if you don't think that they're built that way, Oregon dominates Ole Miss offensively in every stat, defensively in every stat, special teams in every stat. I just think that they're a better football team all around, so I would probably put them in the 7th spot over Ole Miss, but also, again, I get it. Like, I'm not upset about that one. The top 10 overall is pretty solid. Like, I think you can nitpick Texas Tech or Oregon, but outside of them, I don't really have too many issues with it.
I think from what the committee, not the College Football Playoff Committee, but the F4D Poll Committee had conveyed to Jace and I think we agree. We talked about it. There's probably 8 teams that we could see, 9 teams that we could see being in the national championship game. That's why building a top 10 in general was so hard this year, because this is part of the byproduct of realignment, part of the byproduct of realignment and the transfer portal and NIL, just we're in the 12-team playoff, where we are in college football today. Part of the byproduct of all of that is the fact that there's no more elite, flawless team. The last one, I would argue, even though they had 2 losses, was Ohio State last year. But the only difference between that team and only being a year away is that was the last brand of the bring all your seniors back, have elite prospects and recruits behind them, and really take off from there. That was the last brand of that. Now, Ohio State might still be that elite this year, but in general, if you're looking at trying to rank, I encourage everyone at home, trying to rank anyone from 9 to 24. And everyone's probably going to be around the same, just because there's no elite team and everyone has a case to be higher and lower than the other. So realistically, Ohio State, Indiana, A&M, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Tech, Ole Miss, Oregon, Notre Dame, our national champion is probably somewhere in that. And that's what it's intended to do. But that's because those are by far the best 9 or so teams.
Yeah, completely agree. Those are the right 9. Like, those are, in my opinion, the 9, like, getting rid of resumes, getting rid of committees. Yeah. Your conferences, all that. Those are the 9 best teams in the country to me. So I'm happy that that's the top.
You can quibble about order. I think Georgia could even argue that could be higher. Alabama could be higher. Maybe A&M. I've seen plenty of arguments this week that they should be much lower because they've played 4 teams that have fired their head coach. What do you want them to do? Lose to them? At least they've destroyed them and beaten them, taken care of business. And then after that, I think it's a question for you of what is the committee? Is there an angle here of where they put Texas? They put Texas at 10. They put Oklahoma at 11. This week, we're going to get into the Oklahoma game. We already talked about the Texas game. This week could be a playoff eliminator for both of them. But I think what they're doing by putting those two teams there is saying if they win out, they're not only in the playoff, but Georgia could be out, Ole Miss could be out, depending on how they do. Like A&M, not. I think they have to go through A&M. Texas has to go through A&M to win out. They could drop down too. So all of a sudden, you're causing a lot of chaos. So I know the Greg Sankey wants 8 SEC teams in the playoff with Texas and Oklahoma. I think a lot of the SEC fans are like, I want clarity, so I hope both of them lose.
Yeah, I think they're just setting up. I don't think Texas or Oklahoma deserve to be at 10 and 11. The way I took it was they're just setting up Georgia. So Texas plays Georgia and they play Texas A&M. I think they're just trying to set up Georgia and Texas A&M to get high ranked wins, and that way they can bolster up, giving them high seeds, giving them good paths. And I think similarly, if Texas was to pull off the Georgia upset, I think they're setting themselves up to say, "Whoa, well, okay, Georgia lost to a really good team, so they shouldn't drop out of the top 10, and Texas just beat a top 5 team, so now they should jump up." Like, I think they're just kind of padding the SEC, giving them a little bit more leeway to win and lose. Because I think there are teams below Texas and Oklahoma that have impressive resumes, that have done more with the schedules that they have been given. And unfortunately, the only difference between them and Texas and Oklahoma is the patch on their jersey. And I think that's probably why they got bumped up. I know I'm always an SEC pessimist when it comes to like the CFP poll and stuff. It just, like I said, if you were to just put these guys all on paper and look at their resumes, I think the outcome of how people would rank them would be much different than the way we talk about them, because their brand image in our heads changes a lot.
I think one thing that I agree with you. I think one thing it's shown though is like the top 25 is showing is, okay, who cares how many Big Ten teams will get in? Who cares how many SEC teams will get in? There's a chance only one ACC team gets in, and Big 12, if Texas Tech falters, loses, there's a chance only one Big 12 team gets in. Now, I think the Big 12, they're hanging out Utah and BYU at 12 and 13 to basically both of them jumping into the playoff when Texas and Oklahoma or if one of those teams loses or both of them loses, then both of them bounce back up. But Miami, they still hold their destiny. If they win out, they should probably be in the ACC title game and have a chance to make the playoff. I think the committee moved them up to 15 to prepare for that. I think Georgia Tech, they win out, they're in the ACC title game. They're probably, even at 2 losses, if they lose the title game, in the playoff. Now, my question for you at that point, we talked about Duke, we talked about Pittsburgh. No, we haven't talked about Pittsburgh yet, but both of those teams, if they win out, they can not only make the conference title game, if they win the conference title game, they're playoff teams, theoretically. Pitt is currently 22 in the college football playoff poll. Duke is unranked. There's a chance that we don't have an ACC team in here. And I don't think that's what the playoff was built for.
Yeah, I think it is what needs to happen. And the whole ACC should be rooting for this, which also adds to why did Pat Narduzzi say what he said about the Notre Dame game. If Pitt gets blown out, if Pitt just gets his butt kicked and Notre Dame hands it to him, they win by 30, and then it ends up being a Pitt-Duke ACC championship, and at that point, it doesn't really matter who wins. Rightfully so, the committee could look at that and say, one of your best teams, if not your best team, got their butts kicked by Notre Dame. Why on earth should we give you a shot at the playoff? You know, and then also, like, James Madison's probably going to be 12-1. You can't send, like, if you're the ACC, you like have to pray that Pitt can hang in there or beat Notre Dame. I don't think they're going to beat them, but you got to pray they cover. And you also have to pray that between Miami or one of the one lot, like Georgia Tech, please don't choke if you're Georgia Tech. Also, Georgia Tech gets a date with Georgia, so they're going to have also a chance to prove themselves. The ACC prove themselves against a different conference to kind of say, hey, I know you're disrespecting us, but please look at how Pitt played against Notre Dame. Please look at how Georgia Tech played against Georgia. You're going to need those two teams as a whole conference right now to kind of carry the weight of what you're going to do. And you cannot be having Pat Narduzzi go up and say the game doesn't matter and he doesn't care if he loses by 100. I don't know what on earth that was. That's a whole different conversation, but not a good look for, if I'm an ACC fan, I'm pissed.
So I think what is pretty obvious is Georgia Tech, I think, has the easiest path. They have one loss. they could make things a lot easier if they win out they're in. Because I think Pitt has Miami and Georgia Tech on the schedule. So if they were to win out, they're sure they lose to Notre Dame, but that means they beat Pitt, Miami, and Georgia Tech. So at that point, the committee has some reason to move them up. But I think to clear everything up for the ACC, Georgia Tech or Miami go win out and get your spot in the ACC title game, win the game, get in. That is generally my thought for the college football playoff poll that came out on Tuesday. I still don't know how Tennessee's ranked. South Florida, I think, is electric, and I think they could actually potentially make some noise in the first round, depending on who they play. With that said, like they're 24 right now. Last week was Memphis. Next week it could be Tulane. So all they're trying to tell you is, as of right now, the American champ is going to be the Group of 5 representative in the college football playoff, and that's what they're saying. Now things could change drastically this week if there's another just cannibalism of a week in the ACC, but we'll get into that. One thing we have to get into, last night and leading into this morning, the F4D committee met in a basement in Texas, and the truth knowers, the ball knowers, came up with the F4D poll 3.0. This is gospel as far as I know. Jace and I, we've gone through it. We've made some changes, but this is, as far as I know it, how the best 25 teams in the country. Jace, would you like to give us a lead in?
Let's do it. We have the exact same top 10 as the committee. We have number 10, Texas, number 9, Notre Dame, number 8, Ole Miss. Sorry, we flipped it. Number 8, Ole Miss, number 7, Oregon. That's the change that we made. 6, Texas Tech, 5, Georgia, 4, Alabama, 3, Texas A&M, 2, Indiana, number 1, Ohio State. Again, you could, if you want to get nitpicky, you could flip 1 or 2 teams here and there. Notre Dame and up, those are the 9 best teams in the country. Those are, if we did a round robin against everybody, those 9 teams would be on top. I think those 9 teams, I'm hoping none of them flub up and have a big injury this year. I would love to see all 9 of them in the college football playoff. We felt really comfortable, 9 and above. Not we, sorry, the committee. And then the committee, yes, the people we had in Texas, and we agreed with them when they were talking about it. That like group of 2 lost teams from 10 to 22, those are tough to rank. All of them have 1 or 2 highlights that, you can say, well, they beat so-and-so or their loss was so good, but they all have 2 or 3 games where it's like, but look at how bad you looked in these 3 games, or look at who you lost to the second time around, or, hey, you haven't beaten anybody. They all have 1 or 2 or 3 flaws, but 1 or 2 or 3 strengths, and, you can kind of flip them around. I'll let you do the honors if you want to walk us through 25 through 11.
I want to first address something that may look like us being hypocrites. Last week I was, and Jace as well, pretty infuriated by Notre Dame being ranked 11 and Miami being ranked 18. We both said they both have the same record, and Miami has a head-to-head win over them. If you're not going to honor your criteria, College Football Playoff Committee, why do you tell us you do? Because theoretically, the F4D poll last week, they honor the criteria. They put Miami ahead of Notre Dame. The point of this, though, isn't the committee being hypocrites. It's not us not saying Miami's not good. It's the fact that Notre Dame has separated itself. They've played a couple really good teams and they've lost to really good teams. You don't want to bring up bad losses, or good losses, because no loss technically is good. But they've lost to Miami by 1 and they lost to Texas A&M by 3. Their 2 losses have been by 4 points. Miami has lost by, I don't know how many, but they lost to unranked teams both times. Now those teams are ranked. Miami to the committee is ranked at 12, very much in the playoff if they win out, and very much on the bubble to make it. But in general, unless you have more to add on Notre Dame, I think there's Notre Dame and the 8 teams above it have separated themselves as the top 9 teams.
Yeah, I would agree. And Miami, unfortunately for them, Louisville lost to Cal this week. It was a bad loss. Cal was a 20-point underdog. That hurt. It hurts your credibility when you lose. When your loss is Louisville, who's number 12 or 13. That's not so bad. But now it's going to drop down to, I think the committee put them at 20 now.
So
it makes your loss look a little worse. SMU is still a good loss though. They're just outside. I think the committee said that was a team they tussled with for a minute, but they landed just outside the F4D poll as well.
The other thing the F4D committee tussled with, I'm going to use your word, is number 6 Texas Tech, number 7, 5 Georgia. I think Georgia, the thing that kept Georgia above Texas Tech is the fact that Georgia has a better win than Texas Tech, and they have a better loss. They lost at home to Alabama by 3 points. Texas Tech lost on the road, which is inherently better, but to Arizona State, which is unranked. And Ole Miss is ranked number 8 in that F4D committee. That alone is enough criteria-wise to leave Georgia ahead of Texas Tech. But in terms of just pure skill, pure talent, there was consternation in the committee meeting room trying to put them above Georgia. Going quickly through 11 through 25, the 10 through 25, Texas is 10, 11 Vandy. They lost to Texas, but it was a close game. They have a very good shot of making the playoff. Miami at 12, we mentioned. BYU, after the loss last week, dropped down to 13. Utah, they're kind of just hanging around. They're 14. They need some things to go their way, but they are in it still, and I think no one realizes that they are, in, other than the committee and the F4D committee. So Utah's at 14. Georgia Tech hanging out too. They coming off of a loss to NC State at 15. 16 Oklahoma, 17 USC, Michigan at 18, Virginia at 19 after they lost last week, Louisville at 20, Pitt at 21, South Florida at 22, Iowa 23, Cincy 24, and the F4D committee loves the group of 5 for putting Tulane at 25 because it's kind of tiring seeing the college football playoff committee just put whoever's hot in the group of 5 at 25 and calling it a day. The F4D committee is giving these teams some praise because we don't want to keep going from Memphis to Tulane to South Florida to James Madison. Actually deserving of it. South Florida at 22 and Tulane at 25 are deserving of a top 25 rank.
Absolutely. I think that rounds us out well. South Florida, they had a really hot start to the year, and after they lost, after they lost to Miami big, I feel like everyone kind of hopped off the South Florida train. People forgot about them. They've been a wagon since then. It's just been against the teams in the American. People haven't been watching them as much, but they're just as electric as they have been at the beginning of the year. Again, kind of a frisky team. I could see them giving Ole Miss a fight just because Ole Miss doesn't have a defense. But that's probably the matchup of your South Florida. You just got to kind of hope you get a playoff team that would have no defense. But that's also assuming they win the American because you have Tulane, you have North Texas, who's been really good in that conference. So it'll be interesting to see who comes out of that.
Yeah. I think the F4D committee put together a pretty great poll this week, the 3.0. Let us know what you think of it. Obviously, as we've mentioned countless times, if you have a problem with it, take it up with the committee, not Jace and I. We are just the spokespersons for this poll. We don't get paid for it, but we just like to do it because it's fun. Shot in the bark time. Obviously, as always, shot in the bark. Every week, Jace and I pick a underdog in a game that has to be 8.5 points or greater underdogs in their game. And if they cover that spread, they get 1 point. If they win outright, we get 2 additional points. So Jace right now heading into this week has been on a heater. I think you've outright covered 2 straight weeks. You are sitting at 12 points. I am sitting at 10 points just behind you. There was a point where I was like up 7-4 and I said, oh man, I just need to shoot for just straight covers and I could cruise to the win. And then you've just come out with 3-pointer after 3-pointer and you've made it work. Jace, what's your pick this week? Who is your shot in the bark?
My shot in the bark is going to be here in the great city of Chicago, playing at Wrigley Field, the Northwestern Wildcats.
Wrigley Field, baby.
Yeah, they're playing on the field. I'm taking them plus 11.5 versus number 18, Michigan. I apologize to all my Michigan friends. I have a lot of friends coming into town for that game. I live about a 15-minute walk from where it'll be happening. But Northwestern, I think, is a better team than they get credit for. They're able to run the football, and they're decent against the run defensively. It's going to be a cold November day here in Chicago. It's going to be windy. Michigan's not really a team that's, I think, going to throw the ball over the top, especially in these conditions. I think I like a low-scoring battle in this one. I think Michigan's a team that's going to try and just out-physical and run the ball. Northwestern, surprisingly, does their best against teams who just try to play physical bully ball. Northwestern's weaknesses this year have been like fast wide receivers, big play-making wide receivers, quarterbacks that can throw the football. And not that Michigan's a bad team, but what makes them good is not speedy receivers that beat you over the top. It's not a quarterback that's going to beat you over the top. And I think that plays well for Northwestern. So I like the 11.5. I don't know if they're going to win this game. Michigan is, I think, a more physical team up front. I think Michigan's going to win. I don't think it's going to be by more than 11.5 points.
I like that pick. I think that's more of a, all right, not necessarily what Northwestern team will we see, but they went to USC last week, and I would argue, maybe they probably would have still lost the game, but that play by Jaden Maiava after the almost pick six to tackle the guy, force a fumble, get USC the ball back. King Miller explodes for an absolute hell of a run right after, changed the complexion of the game in general. And Northwestern, if they wouldn't have won, they would have probably still covered. So I like this pick here. Michigan doesn't have a quarterback that could throw like Jaden Maiava can yet. At least Bryce Underwood will be very good, just not yet. They don't have the receivers that USC has. Probably will get them in the portal this year, but not yet. I like that pick. My pick is I'm picking a 1-6 conference team to cover against the number 3 team in the country, South Carolina, plus 19.5 at Texas A&M. So now let me read you the scores of their losses this year. So right, like I said, they're 3-6, 1-6 in conference. None of it's great. So they lost they lost 31-7 to Vanderbilt. They lost 20-29 to Mizzou. They lost 20-10 to LSU. They lost 26-7 to Oklahoma, and they lost 29-22. They lost 29-22 to Alabama and 30-14 to Ole Miss. What do all those losses except one have in common? None of them were more than 20 points.
Oh, okay. So 19
I'm just
right
hope that 19.5 right there. They only lost by 20 to one team, and that was Vanderbilt 31-7. They've hung on somehow against every other team, just at least covering. Like the Oklahoma game, they lost 26-7. That's 19. But I think that would still cover for me. So I'm hoping for a cover here. If we get an outright win, then absolute chaos would happen. But I'm hoping for a cover here.
Yeah, outright wouldn't be wild.
Yeah.
I was going to say with shot in the bark, last thought. This is getting into the crunch time. This is strategy time. We have this week and then 2 more weeks, and then it's over. So same with the pick'em. We're close in both. There's obviously less strategy in pick'em. I guess you could fade the other guy. That's probably the best strategy there. But with shot in the bark, there is. We're both going for what we think are good covers. So if one of us gets lucky with an outright win, that would be huge. Or if one of us just doesn't get the cover, which obviously is very plausible.
Well, actually, I have a path to winning pick'em, but it's kind of cheap. So right now, you're picking first again this week because you won 2 weeks ago and the week before that. And then last week we tied, but you're still picking first. So theoretically, I could just pick the same games as you for the rest of the year. And you still have to pick first because I'm on that and I have a 2-game lead. So theoretically, that's just sleazy. I won't do that.
I appreciate the integrity that you play with because you could just tail me every pick and then guarantee the win.
That's just not fun. I'm doing this for fun. I'm not. No, the shot in the bark. This is what I said. I know we're like 2 weeks away or 3 weeks away from the end, but like what I said when I took the 7-4 lead over you is like, do I just take safer covers theoretically and just try to stack point after point? But honestly, if Northwestern wins outright, it's over. Like I need 2 outright wins for the rest of the year to even try to come back. But if Northwestern covers for you, it's tough. If Northwestern wins for you, then it's over. Jace, you got a fun game for us planned. I have no idea what you're talking about. Let's get into it. Why don't you lead it in?
Yes, let me take it over from here. So I wanted to do something fun. When I was looking through all these different 2-loss teams in the committee, I was about to text Farbod, ask for his thoughts on some of these teams, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to set up some blind resume rankings for you of 2-loss teams. So, and I have them like blacked out on our rundown so he can't see them. Only I can. I didn't use any verbiage to like spoil who like who the teams are or anything like that. But I will give you the information about their resume. Like, who have they beaten? Who have they lost to? Do they win by a lot? Were they covering? Are they not? I'll give you that lowdown of these 3 2-loss teams. And you're going to rank, there's team A, team B, team C. You're going to rank them. And then if you want for fun too, you can guess who you think they are. And if you're a listener at home, join us along, try and rank these 3
Please.
teams and see if you can guess who they are. And then obviously I will review them.
I feel like
them.
I listen and watch enough college football. Obviously, we have this podcast that I know enough college football. I feel like you're about to expose me somehow, and without meaning to. Like, I feel like I'm about to fall right into your trap. But I also,
there's no trap.
For those at home, Jace just unblacked out the first team in our in the blind resume. I haven't read it, but the first word I saw was stinky, and I was like, okay, this is about to be elite. So I'm gonna let you explain everything.
Yes, let me go here for you. So we're gonna start with team. So again, there's gonna be 3 teams. They all have 2 losses. They're all in the Power 4. Okay, so like, I'll review when you see who they are at the end. You can figure out where they're ranked and if you agree with that or not. So let's start with Team A. Okay. Team A had obviously 2 losses. One of them was early in the season against a top team in the country. It was an ugly game, but for both sides, and it was not a blowout. It was a close game, hard fought. They lost. Their second loss also came early, mid part of the season, and it was against one of their conference opponents who was 3-6 in the conference. They lost that one by a couple, but that opponent is 3-6 in their conference. All right, we're going to jump over to the wins here. So to start the year off, they played 3 non-con. They played 3 non-Power 4 teams. They won all 3, so they were 3-0 straight up, but they went 1-2 against the spread. And of those 3 teams, like to date right now, they only have 6 total wins combined. So very, very, very stinky teams, which is where that word comes in. And they went 1-2 against the spread against them. All right, their next win was against a ranked team, but that ranked team was playing with an injured quarterback. So it was a half version of that quarterback. Then they rattle off 2 straight overtime wins, one of them against another stinky conference opponent, one of them against like a middling one, nothing to call home about, but not a bad team. I think you know who this one is. And then their recent
it's starting to
win
for me. That's what I just wrote it down.
Keep it hid. Just try to go off resumes if you're figuring out who it is. And then their last win was a 3-point win at home against a ranked team where they looked really good for half of it and they looked really bad. So that is Team A. I won't recap it. That's a lot to recap. Do you feel good there? Do you want to sit on them and chat about them a little bit?
I think we reveal all of them and then chat because
I like that.
I do think I know who this one is, but that only the last line kind of gave it away for me. But I think we can move to the next one.
Yeah, and do your best. If you figure out who they are, just try to stick with the resume here instead of the team.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Team B. So again, obviously 2 losses. Loss number 1 was they got beat handedly by one of the top teams in the country. So was not a close game, but it was a good team, really good team. And then their other loss was a 3-point loss against a good ranked team, very good ranked team. So their 2 losses too, their combined records of that opponent is 17-2. So their 2 losses, that's the record that they hold. For their wins, early in the season, they played a lowly Big Ten team. They won by 33. They covered in that one. And then they had 2 stinky non-Power 4 bad teams, but they blew them out of the water. In those 3 games, they went 3-0 against the spread in the non-con. And then for their conference opponents, they've won 4, just rattled off 4 straight against the conference opponents. All of them were dominant. They went 4-0 against the spread, winning by a combined 143 points against those 4 conference opponents. So that is Team B. And then Team C is, again, 2 losses. Loss number 1 was a 3-point loss to a solid ranked team. Not one of the best teams in the country, but a solid ranked team. 3-point loss. And then their second loss was a road overtime loss to a good 7-3 team. Not a ranked 7-3 team, but a good 7-3 team. All right, their wins. Early in the season, they got a top 10 win early in the country. That team is still ranked. They're still good. And then they played another ranked team who they beat by 37 shortly after. They played a bummy team after that, but they destroyed them, covered the spread there. They played a lowly SEC team that they beat. They beat them by 20. They covered against the spread there. And keynote, that 3-6 conference opponent that I mentioned from Team A, that Team A lost to, is the team that Team C beat by 20. And then against conference opponents, they're 3-0. 3-0 straight up, and against the spread, they've blown out their 3 other conference opponents. Not good ones, but they're killing them. So that wraps up for Team C. I'll let you start with wherever your head's at.
So my head after Team A, I was pretty confident playing this game, and then I have no idea who the other 2 teams are. So you did a good job.
Good.
But I mean, I still could be wrong about Team A. I will say, actually, I don't even know if I know who Team A is. But regardless, where I'm struggling with the whole ranking thing, and we talked about this with that F4D committee, is I hate the term good loss. But if we're comparing Team A that has a loss to a top team in the country, but they also have a loss to a 3-6 opponent, but Team B was beat handedly by a top team in the country, but has a 3-point loss to a good ranked opponent. So, like, how do you weigh out those losses, right? If the Team A's first loss was 4 out of 10 bad, and Team A's second loss was 9 out of 10 bad, like, I'm trying to do the math in my head, and then but Team B, both of their So that's the other thing. Is like the combined record of both of the teams that Team B lost to was 17. So they theoretically, or what that is telling me is like they're not an elite team. They're probably not going to win the national title, but they lost. Like they are slotted where they should be, wherever they are theoretically in the playoff, because they've gotten beat by the teams that are just naturally better than them. Team C is where all confusion comes in, because so we have a 3-point loss to a ranked team. We have a road overtime loss to a 7-3 conference team. They've beaten a top 10 team. They have what, 2 ranked teams? Wait, when it says one bummy team killed them, oh, they killed a bummy team. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense. I feel like this is telling me B and C should be above A, just because A is 1 and 2 against the spread. Their wins are against the best teams in the country. Like a lot of their wins are either close or barely hanging on. That's what it seems like on here. So I think A would be 3rd place in the rankings if I'm just trying to stack them tier by tier. Am I allowed to guess who I think A is?
Give me your rankings and the gaps
Okay.
between them, and then we'll talk about which team they are.
B, I think, would go 2nd. I know the combined record of these teams is 17-2, but there is an aspect of just getting handled that just loses your trust for them in the college football playoff.
Yeah.
See, I feel like I'm getting exposed with that smile.
No, I'm laughing because it's just like I'm reading back my word choice. It's just funny. Like handled, bummy, stinky.
Yeah. I love it. And then like I feel like there's an aspect of you put a team that gets handled by a team that's clearly better than them in the playoff. Do you trust that? Because they're going to play teams that are better than them in the playoff. So I feel like B would be number 2, a little bit better than A because they have better losses theoretically and they have really good wins. And C, to me, their losses are great. They're the only one here that's the B and C are the ones that have lost to ranked teams, and C seems like they lost on the road in overtime, road OT, in overtime, and they lost by 3 to a ranked team. And I assume that game's at home. So like those losses are as acceptable as you can guess they are.
That's a good word choice.
So I would put C at 1. And I think I know who C and A are now that I'm talking it through.
Okay, so your final rankings are C, then B, then A.
Yes.
That's correct. All right. Now, so I like that. I think I would rank these teams the same way that you blind ranked them. Let's talk about who you think they are, and we'll chat about that a little bit. So give me who you think these teams are.
I think A is Texas.
That is correct. It is Texas.
I saw they're lost to a top team in the country, and they have a 3-point win against a ranked team. That's Vanderbilt. I don't know who B is, but I'm going to still think about it.
Oh, no, sorry. Keep going.
I don't know. And then C, I think, is Miami.
C is Miami. That is also correct. Yeah, so we'll chat about these two quickly. Texas, Team A, their loss to the top team in the country was Ohio State in that 14-7 disgusting game. That flag for discussion called right, you know. And then 3 and 6 conference opponent, that was Florida, who Miami beat by 20. So that's the Team A lost to this team. Team B beat them handedly. Miami, the 3-point loss to ranked team was Louisville at home, and then the road overtime loss was to SMU when they lost that. Was it 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago now. And then their top 10 win was Notre Dame. Their ranked team that they beat by 37 was USF. And then the conference opponents, I don't remember off the top of my head, but nothing crazy to call home about. Team B is an interesting one, and I really like your analysis, and I agree. I think when you get beat handedly, the way that this team did, to a really good team, it is a ceiling-defining loss. That's like, okay, you're good, but you're not one of the big dogs. But their ability to destroy everyone else that they're playing is like, okay, you clearly have a high floor. You're clearly a good team. You're beating lesser opponents. But when it gets to that upper echelon, are you there? I wonder if that helped you spark who Team B might be.
No, there's part of me that's thinking, so let's talk this through again. And I'm sorry at home. I don't know if this is good or bad podcasting, but you're about to see what my brain thinks. All right, they was lost handedly by... They got beaten handily by one top team in the country. Can I phone a friend? What does handedly mean? Is that 14 plus?
They were 3.5-point favorites. Team B was going into the game. They lost by 24. But the team that they lost to has turned out to be much better than we realized at the time.
Got it. Okay. So there goes my Vanderbilt guess. Because I was thinking maybe you were thinking Alabama, Vanderbilt.
It is, it's not Vanderbilt.
This feels like Oklahoma too, because it got beat handedly by Texas. This one's tricky. I mean, I don't think it's Georgia Tech. Who else could it be? Ole Miss doesn't have a second loss. Who else has a second loss? Dude, I'm stumped.
Do you want me to tell you? You want to learn? Do you want to find out? Or do you want to figure it out?
Get me learned.
All right,
I think we've taken up enough of the listeners' time. Get me learned.
It is the Fightin' Utes, the Utah Utes is Team B. They got blown out by that one was, I was like, Utah has a sneaky solid resume. I think solid is the word I want to use for that. They lost early in the year to what was number 17 Texas Tech. And we did not, and that was when Will Hammond first played. And so a lot of people didn't credit that. A lot of people took that as a really bad loss. And I feel like that wrote Utah off for the season. But come to find out, Will Hammond is a dog, and Texas Tech is really good. Every other game they have played, killed UCLA, killed Cal Poly, killed Wyoming, killed West Virginia, killed Arizona State, lost at BYU by 3 in a game in which they had many opportunities to win. They kill Colorado, and they kill ranked Cincinnati recently. Now that Cincinnati's ranked. They have destroyed every single team when they win. And it has been some decent teams. Arizona State's not a bad team. At West Virginia isn't easy, but it's not great. Cincinnati's a good football team. If they just win that BYU game, I really think that they find themselves in a better conversation. And that I think that Texas Tech loss is just, it was a tough time for them. It was the worst Texas Tech was in the mind of everybody else this season.
I love that. That explains to me, because when I was talking about the playoff, then Utah is just hanging around, and they're kind of set up in a position where the committee can throw them in if they're feeling like it, and if they if they drop one, they're easily out, and the committee doesn't have to even bat an eye about dropping them. I mean, they were my Big 12 champ pick at the beginning of the year for a reason. I'm very happy to see that this is their the resume is this impressive. It's also they got beat handedly 34-10, I think, by Texas Tech. And Texas Tech brought in their Will Hammond as their backup quarterback. That was a 10-10 game through most of the third quarter. And then Utah kind of fell apart. I think the reason that game looks bad is because it was at Rice-Eccles. It wasn't in Lubbock. And the way Utah fell apart, you just don't know if you could trust them again. But the end of the day, if they were to play each other again, I would probably still favor Texas Tech. But it goes back to the whole theory of what we were saying at the beginning of the reason that Utah is in the position they are, and they're excellent. And it goes back to what we said at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of the show, where the Texas team that lost to Ohio State week 1 may still very well lose to them if they played again, but that team wouldn't be able to sniff the Texas of week 11. You constantly get better. College football, these are 18, 19-year-olds playing college football Division 1 games. They're bound to get better week by week by week. That's interesting. If Utah finds a way into the playoff, we'll see how they do from there. Jace, thank you for that exercise. I think we need to do more stuff like that, just because I think people would, when they see Miami move up, when they see Utah up there, and we make arguments that they might need to be above Texas. People would be like, why? No, but like you look at the resume, yeah, they're both above Texas. They should be, and maybe that F4D committee we should talk to them. We need to talk to them.
It was when the committee was giving me the rankings, we were putting them together. You know, they're feeding you and I and our earpieces. When it was like when the 2-loss team conversation was up, I was like, I can't reveal anything because they're all 2-loss teams. So I was like, bite tongue. Let's see what the committee goes with. I was like, because I was with the committee and when they were ranking it, and then as I was putting together these blind ranked resumes, I was like, man, it does feel like CBA. But we'll see. We'll see what Farbod says because I was biased. Obviously, I knew the team names and who they were. So good to see. They're close to the rankings. I'll finish it here. Texas is 10. That's Team A. Team B is Utah. They're 13. And Team C is Miami. They're 15. So we kind of both agree that it should be flips, right? Miami should be the best of those three, and then Utah, then Texas. They have it the other way around. But it's 10, 13, 15. So it's not the end of the world. Team C was unranked, that would be a cause for huge concern. They're all kind of chunked up right in that 10 to 15 range, and they all kind of control their own destiny. I think if they win out, everything else will sort themselves out.
You know what it is, right? The committee met in Texas last night to come up with the poll. Yeah,
they probably had some
we got to get them in Utah or something. Yeah.
They had some good Texas barbecue and got a little too excited. But that's all right. I can't blame them. I love Texas barbecue.
I think we need to send them to like Canada. Like just completely out of the country, be as neutral as possible, and we'll see from there. All right. Enough talking about our committee picks. Let's get into our week 11 picks. Jace, you're going to pick first this week. Last week I said that I'm seeing a lot of green, and I just realized that we both went 3-2, so we both got a lot right. So I was seeing a lot of green, except I was seeing both of the green. Like this week, I'm telling you right now, I'm seeing this week very clearly, and I see a lot of green on my name. So let's get into it. Jace, the first game that we're going to pick, Notre Dame, number 9 Notre Dame is your cursor's over the it's a 12.5 point favorite at number 22 Pitt. This is Saturday at noon on ABC. RIP YouTube TV viewers. I think they might be able to come to a solution to that before that game, but I don't know. Jace, who do you got in this game and why?
I am going to take the Fighting Irish. I'm going to take Notre Dame minus 12.5. I think they're a wagon right now. I think they had 2 really frustrating losses for that team. Very close games, 4 total points combined. And they've gotten better each and every week. We talk about, you hear people talk about Ohio State last year. How sure it wasn't the sexiest regular season you've ever seen, but they got better every single week. That feels like Notre Dame right now. They feel like a team that is getting better every single week. The Notre Dame team that's playing football right now, if we go back in time and put them down to play Miami and Texas A&M, I think they win both of those. I have a lot of faith. I think they also know with them being at 9, there's no margin for error here. They don't play in a conference. They're not going to be able to get in a conference championship. Marcus Freeman, I believe, to rally his troops. I think they come out firing. I also just don't know if I believe in Pitt all the way through to hang in there with Notre Dame. And quick note before I hand it over to you, they better get in. As a Hulu man, I'm okay, thankfully. But for your sake on YouTube TV, ABC on Saturday is what my dad and I call no turners. ABC at noon, you've got Notre Dame, Pitt. And then at 3:30 of Oklahoma, Alabama. And then at 7:30, you have Texas, Georgia. ABC is a no-turner on Saturday. Find a screen, put ABC on, and don't turn that. The YouTube TV gets it right for you, so you can have one of those.
So thank you. I appreciate that. We're struggling out here. I also am picking Notre Dame, but I'm going to tell you something. Ever since Eli Holstein was benched at Pitt and they brought in their backup quarterback, they were undefeated. Granted, against pretty mid teams. They beat Boston College, Florida State, Syracuse, NC State, and Stanford. Not that they haven't beaten anybody really, but Pat Narduzzi was literally asked about this game in his Monday press conference. He said, "I don't care about this game. I don't care if we lose by 100. It's not an ACC game." Granted, Pat Narduzzi is probably absolutely right, but at the same time, if either that's a sign that you should take Notre Dame minus 12.5, or this is Pat Narduzzi trying to get Notre Dame to come into the way Alabama went to Florida State game. Like, we're better than you. We're going to beat you. We're going to be calm. But I think Notre Dame just run game, the way they play football it's so easy to travel and so repeatable that it's going to be too hard for Pitt to hang on. The only question I have for you, Jace, and because I didn't provide a ton of analysis on this game, I saw today the New York Giants are looking at Marcus Freeman. And don't get me wrong, I could get a lot of egg on my face if he takes one of those jobs. I know there's a reason that college football coaches look at NFL jobs. They have a life in the NFL. Granted, it's still not much of a life. You're still like preparing game plan, coaching all day, every day. But you're not recruiting. You're not constantly traveling to visit recruits. You don't have to go eat grandma's meatloaf and make them feel like you don't have to deal with shady agents. You're dealing with NFL PA agents. So I get all the reasons. But if you are the head coach at Alabama, Notre Dame, Texas, Ohio State, Oregon, LSU, like the premier of the premier programs in the country, and I'm including Oregon there because even though they might not be traditional blue bloods, they have such a good financial backing. You like in the NFL, you have to go deal with an owner. In college football, you deal with boosters, but you are the owner of the team. What the team does is because you want it to do. I don't understand why any people think that they can just be like Notre Dame. I'm going to give up being the czar of Notre Dame football to go deal with an NFL owner that's fired 5 coaches in the last 5 years, in the last like 10 years. I just don't understand.
I don't buy the Marcus Freeman leaving. I don't think Marcus Freeman will leave Notre Dame I think Ohio State might be his only other tie. And even that's like Ryan Day's not leaving there. I've talked to a good friend of mine I've alluded to him a few times, big Notre Dame fan. And we kind of talk about a lot of the parallels of Dan Lanning and Marcus Freeman. And when it comes to Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame, he's got such a good spot. You don't play in a conference. That means all the money like comes to you. You don't have to share it with your conference. You make a playoff and win a playoff game. You don't have to share that with your conference mates. You just take it in. They have good backing. They have a great college town. They've got a great football team. He's able to recruit in the Midwest at elite level. He's able to recruit in the South. They recruit in California. He's got everything he could possibly need there to succeed. And it's such an attractive job. It's a fan base that rallies behind its team, and it's a big one. It's boosters that I've bought into Marcus Freeman. He's got a healthy relationship with his boosters. He's got a healthy relationship with his AD. It's well funded. He's got everything going there.
And
I can tell you, and they're ascending. And I can promise you, the New York Giants are one of the least attractive NFL teams. If you're a head coach, first of all, everyone hates MetLife, so it's impossible to get good free agents to go there. It's a team where the ownership has rumored, I have obviously no insights in this, but I've heard rumors that the ownership has had issues with coaches. And like you said, they've fired so many the last few years. They've struggled to be successful in quite a long time. I'm not sure that's the job jump, that he would need to leave Notre Dame. And I'm not sure there is one for Marcus, but I definitely don't think it's the Giants.
Like I said, I think there is very valid reasons for college football coaches to leave for the NFL, especially if their dream is one day coaching the NFL. But in college, you're the owner of your program. You have to deal with boosters, and that some of them can get tricky and annoying. But you make the decisions. You get to choose as much as you want. If you are at one of those programs like in Notre Dame, like in Alabama, Ohio State, Oregon, Georgia, I didn't mention Georgia the first time, like you don't leave that program. You don't leave that job. Like you're going to go get paid similar amount of money in the NFL where most coaches get fired after 3 to 4 years unless you win your conference. I just don't see that. I hate the Marcus Freeman rumors coming up unless it's like you said to Ohio State. All right. We both picked Notre Dame that game. Let's go to number 19, Virginia, to undefeated Duke. Duke's a 5.5 point. I mean, not undefeated, unranked Duke. Duke's a You were checking. Duke's a 5.5
They
point
lost a lot.
favorite. This is Saturday, 3:30 Eastern on ESPN2, apparently. This game has a huge bearing on the college football playoff. We've already mentioned Duke as the potential 9-4 if they win out college ACC champ, and giving the committee a hell of a time trying to keep an ACC champ in the playoff. And Virginia, they finally lost their first conference game, their second game overall. But you almost felt like they were bound to lose one. They were just kind of sneaking away with wins against average competition, and they had an injury. They lost. They dropped one. Who you got in this game?
I am
and why?
rocking with Virginia -5.5 or +5.5. Sorry, not -5.5. Virginia +5.5. And I actually, when I saw this, I immediately put Duke down because I was like, oh, I don't trust Virginia. I think once it rains, it pours for them. They lost ugly against Wake. Here's going to come the Duke train. But then I was like, whenever I'm super confident like that, I feel like it's always wrong. So I always think like, no, stick to your guns. And then I regret it. So I'm going to try to learn from myself, and we're going to pick Virginia here for literally that only reason why. There's no game analysis behind it. Virginia +5.
The only game analysis I have is Chandler Morris left the game last week for Virginia with an injury, and today he was just expected to practice, but before that there was a chance that he would be out for this game. I'm taking Duke to cover 5.5. I don't feel good about it, but I feel good about it. I think Darian Mensah and Duke are going for the 9-4 conference champ. All right, heading to the Coliseum. Number 21 Iowa is playing number 17 USC. USC is a 6.5 point favorite. Saturday, 3:30 Eastern on the Big Ten Network. This is the same spread as Oregon was favored on the road against Iowa. Clearly, Oregon is favored by a little bit more than over USC. Where's the thinking here for, like, where are you leaning? I think you could give very good arguments for both sides.
Yeah, I think these two teams are in very interesting spots. I'll try to get through this quickly, but for Iowa, usually after a tough emotional loss, you kind of find a team in a low spot, and sometimes they get beat pretty handily the next week. But I think Kirk Ferentz has been around college football long enough to know how to avoid that. Also, I think with Iowa's style of play, it's just hard to beat them by a lot of points, just the way they kind of drag you down into the deep end. So I like it for that reason for them. And then on the USC front, they beat Northwestern by a lot of points. But again, if you go back and watch that game, there's a few really crucial, crazy plays that happened that really turned that thing on its head. And I think that could play into this a little bit. I also think this is a really easy lookover spot for USC. Iowa just had a big loss. USC has to go play in Eugene, and that's going to be that might be their personal biggest game of the year. So there's a very real chance they're kind of looking forward to that. I think this is a spot where you could have a lookover spot on one side, a letdown spot on the other. I'm going to get Iowa football gets in there, and I think this is going to be a one-score game. So I'm going to take Iowa on the +6.5.
So there's, like I said, you can make arguments for both sides. I think Iowa, if they played the brand of football they did against Oregon, you could completely argue that they can beat USC. They're not a good matchup for USC. They're more physical Illinois, where they want to run the ball and they're not going to apologize for running the ball, and they're going to stop you on the ground. So if Iowa goes in there and commits to stopping King Miller, commits to stopping the run game, then they have a shot in this game for me. I think the tough part is USC this year compared to prior years is extremely balanced in their wins, and they play really well at home. So if they can run the ball and Jada Maiava can throw for 200, 250 like he has so far, he had a really bad game a couple weeks ago, but if they can stay semi-balanced, I just don't think Iowa has the firepower to go into this. I also, not that I don't even remember what Lincoln Riley said, but if you remember early on in his tenure at USC, he kind of trash talked Iowa and the Big Ten for the style of play they play. And Iowa's been looking forward to playing them ever since. So I'm wondering if Iowa's going to have Iowa's going to have something to say, or I just think USC at home is a much different team than USC on the road. I think USC played Michigan which is a slightly less physical but better passing team than Iowa. USC's, I think in general, USC has the ability to separate themselves in this game. I'm going to take USC to win and cover this game, setting themselves up for a big time matchup next week against Oregon. Let's go quickly. Tuscaloosa, number 11, Oklahoma, playing number 4, Alabama. Alabama was a 6-point favorite. This is the 3:30 Eastern game on ABC. What do you got?
I'm going to go Alabama. I think Oklahoma, they haven't looked great ever since Mateer got hurt. I don't know if he's healthy or not, but he hasn't looked like himself since then either. And Alabama's humming. I think Ty Simpson's playing his best football. They've really figured out the Ryan Grubb offense. I like Alabama to win comfortably here. So I like that -6. I feel good about it.
I said to you before we started recording that there's a chance this weekend could be the weekend that eliminates Oklahoma and Texas from the college football playoff. I think Oklahoma gets eliminated this week. Alabama is going to win and cover the 6 points. I think we're going to get a really dangerous Alabama, and they're ascending still.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes. Our last game that we're going to pick. So far, we've been on the same side of 2. We've been on opposite sides of 2. Let's see where we are for number 10, Texas, at number 5, Georgia. Georgia's a 6-point favorite as well. This is the Saturday night game, 7:30 Eastern on ABC. Jace, take the floor.
As I mentioned earlier, I think this is going to be a low-scoring slugfest. I think it's going to be a defensive battle, a lot of field goals. Because of that, I'm going to pick Texas to cover. Now, I think Georgia's a better football team, and I think Georgia's going to win. But in a low-scoring game where a lot of field goals are kicked, I like that 6 points. It makes me feel a little bit more comfortable for anything freaky to happen, although like I'm praying for no overtime. Give us -6. Also, I'm noticing we have 2 -6. Let's please no more pushes. I hate reading that and 1 at the end of our records. It's annoying. So please no pushes this week.
By the way, I think we had another push that I just gave to one of us. I think I gave it to you
Thank you.
4 weeks ago because I was not trying to get praise. I just hate seeing that number at the end too, and it was like a close enough game that I could justify it. Anyways, my pick for this game, I gotta take Georgia. I gotta take.
Yeah, I think that's the right call.
They've played. I don't know. I think I was on Texas the whole drive home from work, and then something just switched for me of like thinking, all right, Georgia is at home. They've had several same opponents, and they've performed. Not that the transitive property is real, but they've performed much better in those games than Texas had. I just think you get the 7:30 nighttime game in Athens. Texas is going to be eliminated from the college football playoff this game. So that's my take. All right, that's our 5 picks. We were rolling through the show. Now we slowed down. Let's roll through the flag for discussion 4-legger and call it a show.
All right, the flag for discussion 4-leg lock this week. I'll start us off with the first leg that we got. Let's stick with Alabama, Oklahoma. We're going to go with the over 45.5. In big games this year, both these teams tend to go over this mark. They tend to be higher scoring games when they've played in the big ones. And I think a big side for us is John Mateer has been getting healthier. We hope he's fully healthy again. If he is, we really like this mark. And then also, just even without that, Alabama's passing offense has been off the charts recently. They're still not really running the football a whole lot, but that doesn't matter when you have Ty Simpson, Jeremy Bernard, Ryan Williams, and that whole offense. We think there's going to be points, at least 45 of them. So we like the over in that.
Our second leg, we're going to take NC State plus 7.5 in the first quarter, right, at Miami.
First half.
The main reason for the first half, okay, the first quarter would have been even greater. The main reason for that is Miami, while they've held leads or at least been tied against much worse competition, has been like tied 7-7, up 10-7, and then they've really taken a step in the second half and blown teams out. Speaking of Stanford, for one, we think NC State, that for whatever reason they perform well against the best at ACC opponents, they're going to show up plus 7.5 first half at Miami.
Oh, I love that one. That's one that you look at how NC State played against Notre Dame. I think they were down 3 at halftime. They ended up losing by a lot. Them and Miami seem to have the opposite issue where NC State shows up for the first 2 and Miami closes them out. So we like the plus 7.5 there. The half was a nice hook as well. Not a lot of 2-point conversions going on in first halves. All right, leg number 3, we have Florida plus 17. We teased this one a little bit from 15.5. So Florida plus 17.5 at Ole Miss. Ole Miss has not been blowing teams out this year. When they've been playing lesser opponents, they tend to still let them score and move the football. DJ Lagway got benched last week. He's going to play. He's going to start this week. Does that wake him up? Does it help him kind of show out a little bit more? And if not, at least the backup got some experience and he played well last week. Ole Miss defense is just struggles. It's hard to win by more than 3 touchdowns when your defense isn't really stopping many people's. Also, Lane Kiffin, his name has been in a lot of coaching hats recently, one of them being Florida. He's been talked about LSU. I'm sure he's been busy with phone calls and all of that kind of extracurricular activities. That always just sometimes leads to a little bit more of a letdown spot than you'd like to see. So give us the Gators on 17.5.
You're absolutely right. Florida, I don't want to make this podcast any longer because it's already too long. But Florida, Ole Miss is going to be Oxford, Mississippi is about to get a hell of a tourism day just because the amount of journalists, beat writers, people from Florida that are about to be in Oxford, not only to cover the game, but to cover Lane Kiffin. That's going to be nuts. I also feel like Florida's played Ole Miss like 6 times this year, and I'm really tired of it. So
It does feel like that.
And maybe it's all the Lane Kiffin talk, but that's what it feels like. All right, the 4th leg, Mississippi State plus 7.5 at Mizzou. Mizzou's a great team, backup quarterback. Mississippi State has shown the ability to fight and not necessarily win, but fight against the better teams. If we can get this to a 1-score game, and the hook at the 7.5 means a lot to us. So those are our 4 legs. That's our picks. That's all of our thoughts. I thought this was going to be a quicker show, but we've had a lot to talk about. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you made it this long, hi Mom. Thank you so much. We appreciate you genuinely. Make sure you are following us on TikTok at flag4 discussion, on Twitter at F4 discussion. We're on YouTube at flag for discussion spelled out. Wherever you get your podcast, at flag for discussion. We're in the home stretch, baby. We're ready to go. We're rearing up. It's week 11 comes and goes. We're going to be at rivalry week talking about the college football playoff itself very shortly. Make sure you're tuned in. Make sure you are here to watch everything. For myself, Farbod Merkazi, my lovely partner, Jace Hatfield, this has been Flagged for Discussion.